Welcome back, friend. It's wonderful to have you here again. Get comfortable, settle in, and let your mind drift into the world we're about to explore together tonight. We're journeying back to a time before Harry Potter ever set foot in Hogwarts, before the boy who lived became a legend, before Voldemort's first fall from power. We're traveling to an era defined by friendship and betrayal, by mischief and war, by love and sacrifice. We're going back to the Marauders era, a time when 4 young wizards formed a bond, so powerful it would shape the fate of the entire wizarding world for generations to come. The Marauders. Even the name carries weight, doesn't it? James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew. 4 boys who met on a train to Hogwarts in 1971 and became inseparable. 4 friends who discovered the castle's deepest secrets and immortalized them on an enchanted map. 4 young men who fought side by side in the darkest of wars. And 4 souls whose paths diverged in ways that would lead to unimaginable tragedy. Their story is complex and layered, filled with moments of pure joy and crushing sorrow. It's a story about the choices we make and the consequences those choices bring. It's about loyalty tested to its breaking point, about prejudice and acceptance, about the masks we wear and the truths we hide. When we look at Harry Potter's journey, we see echoes of his father's generation everywhere. The friendships he forged with Ron and Hermione mirror the bond between the Marauders. The betrayals he suffered reflect the wounds inflicted upon James and Sirius. The struggles he faced were rooted in decisions made years before his birth. To truly understand the Harry Potter story, to grasp the full weight of what happened on that Halloween night in 1981, we need to understand the Marauders. We need to know where they came from, what they believed in, how they lived, and why some of them died. The Marauders era spans roughly from the early 1960s, when these 4 boys were born, through 1981, when Lord Voldemort came to Godric's Hollow seeking to murder a baby named Harry Potter. But the echoes of this era stretch far beyond that fateful night. So tonight, we'll walk through the story of the Marauders era. We'll start at the beginning, with 4 very different boys, from 4 very different backgrounds. We'll follow them to Hogwarts, watch them become the legendary troublemakers, who mapped every secret passage in the castle. We'll witness their illegal transformation into Animagi to support their friend through his darkest nights. We'll see them graduate and join the fight against the darkest wizard of their time. We'll explore the relationships they built, particularly the complex dynamic between James Potter, Lily Evans, and Severus Snape, and we'll confront the betrayal that tore them apart and changed the course of history. This is a story the films only touched upon, offering brief glimpses through memories and flashbacks. Tonight, we're piecing together everything we know from the films, the books, and the expanded lore that J.K. Rowling has shared over the years. So take a deep breath, let your mind settle into this magical world, and let's begin at the beginning with a boy named James Potter, who would one day be remembered as one of the bravest wizards of his generation. James Potter was born on March 27th, 1960, to Flimont and Euphemia Potter at their home in Godric's Hollow. He was their only child, arriving late in their lives after they had given up hope of ever having children. The Potters were an old, pure-blood family, though not as obsessed with blood purity as families like the Blacks or the Malfoys. They had made their fortune through Flemont's invention of Sleekeasy's hair potion, a product that tamed even the most unruly hair. The irony was that Flemont's own son would sport a head of perpetually messy black hair that no potion could control. Flemont and Euphemia adored their son. They indulged him perhaps more than was strictly wise, giving him everything he wanted, and rarely disciplining him when he got into trouble. James grew up knowing he was loved unconditionally, secure in his place in the world, confident in his abilities and his worth. This confidence would serve him well in some ways, making him brave and self-assured. But it also contributed to an arrogance that would take years to overcome. From an early age, James showed signs of powerful magic. His parents recognized his talent and nurtured it, teaching him to control his abilities, while also encouraging his natural curiosity and adventurous spirit. They told him stories of great wizards and brave deeds, filling his head with tales of heroism and glory. When James received his Hogwarts letter, he was ecstatic. His parents bought him everything he needed and more, including his very own broomstick, top of the line and perfect for Quidditch. His parents saw him off at King's Cross Station with tears and smiles. James boarded the Hogwarts Express, already bouncing with excitement as he found an empty compartment and settled in. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to meet the boy who would become his closest friend, his brother in all but blood. Sirius Black was born on November 8th, 1959, into the noble and most ancient House of Black, one of the oldest and proudest pure-blood families in Britain. His parents, Orion and Walburga Black, were second cousins, both carrying the Black family name and both absolutely devoted to the ideals of blood purity. They lived at number 12, Grimmauld Place, a townhouse in London filled with dark artifacts, house elf heads mounted on plaques, and an atmosphere of oppressive tradition. From the moment Sirius drew breath, he was raised to believe certain things, that purebloods were superior to half-bloods and muggle-borns, that the Black family was essentially magical royalty, that tradition and status mattered more than anything else. His mother, Walburga, was particularly fanatical about these beliefs, drilling them into Sirius constantly, punishing any deviation from proper pure-blood behavior. But Sirius was different. Even as a small child, he questioned the things he was told. He didn't understand why muggles were supposed to be inferior, or why blood status should matter more than a person's character or abilities. When he asked these questions, his mother grew angry. The more she pushed, the more Sirius resisted. Sirius had a younger brother, Regulus Arcturus Black, born in 1961. Where Sirius questioned and rebelled, Regulus seemed content to accept the family's teachings. This created tension between the brothers. Their mother clearly favored Regulus, the obedient son who made her proud. Growing up at Grimmauld Place was suffocating for Sirius. The house elf, Creature, reported his every move to his mother. Dark magic permeated the walls. His parents entertained guests who spoke casually about torturing muggles and establishing pure-blood supremacy. Young Sirius heard these conversations and felt sick. When his Hogwarts letter arrived, Sirius saw it as an escape, a chance to get away from Grimmauld Place, away from his mother's constant criticism and his father's cold disappointment. On the Hogwarts Express, Sirius found the compartment where James Potter sat. The two boys took one look at each other, and something clicked. James, with his confidence and his easy charm. Sirius, with his good looks and his desperate need to break free from his family's expectations. They started talking, discovering shared interests and complementary personalities. When they learned they both hoped to be sorted into Gryffindor, against Sirius's entire family tradition of Slytherin, they grinned at each other like conspirators. In that same compartment, they met a boy with greasy black hair and a hooked nose, travelling with a red-haired girl who had startlingly green eyes, Severus Snape and Lily Evans. The interaction didn't go well. James and Sirius made disparaging comments about Slytherin House. Severus defended his ambitions. Lily looked uncomfortable. When Lily and Severus left to find another compartment, James and Sirius laughed about the encounter, not realizing they had just made a rivalry that would last throughout their school years. Remus John Lupin was born on March 10th, 1960, to Lyle and Hope Lupin. Lyle was a wizard who worked at the Ministry of Magic, an expert on non-human spiritual apparitions. Hope was a muggle, a kind and gentle woman who loved her wizard husband and the magical world he introduced her to. Their son Remus was their greatest joy, a bright and curious child who showed signs of magic early on. But everything changed when Remus was 4 years old. Lyle was called to the ministry to examine a werewolf who had been captured for questioning about the murders of 2 muggle children. The creature, Fenrir Greyback, appeared in human form and claimed to be nothing more than a muggle tramp. Most of the ministry officials believed him, but Lyle saw through the disguise. He recognized the telltale signs of lycanthropy and tried to convince the committee that Greyback was indeed a werewolf. The other officials laughed at Lyle's concerns. Frustrated and angry, Lyle made a terrible mistake. In the heat of the moment, he declared that werewolves were soulless, evil creatures deserving nothing but death. Greyback heard these words and decided that Lyle Lupin needed to pay for his insult. On a night shortly before Remus's 5th birthday, Fenrir Greyback forced his way through the Lupin family home's window and into the boy's bedroom. Lyle heard his son's screams and raced upstairs, wand blazing with curses. He managed to drive Greyback away, but the damage was done. Remus had been bitten. The werewolf's curse was in his blood now, irreversible and incurable. The next full moon, Remus transformed for the first time. His parents watched in horror as their gentle, sweet boy became a monster. They tried everything to cure him. They took him to healers across Britain. But nothing worked. Remus was a werewolf, and he would be for the rest of his life. Hope and Lyle never stopped loving their son, but the burden was enormous. Every month, as the full moon approached, they had to lock Remus in a secure room with silencing charms and powerful wards. Unable to find prey, the wolf would turn its violence inward. Remus would wake up after transformations covered in self-inflicted wounds, traumatized by the pain and the loss of control. The Lupin family moved frequently, afraid that neighbors would discover their secret. Werewolves faced extreme discrimination in the wizarding world. As Remus approached his 11th birthday, his parents prepared for heartbreak. They knew he wouldn't receive a Hogwarts letter. No school would accept a werewolf student. Then Albus Dumbledore appeared at their door. The headmaster of Hogwarts explained that he knew about Remus's condition. But rather than report Remus to the ministry, Dumbledore had a different plan. He wanted Remus to attend Hogwarts. Dumbledore explained that special arrangements would be made. A passage would be built from the Hogwarts grounds to a secure building in Hogsmeade Village. During full moons, Remus would be escorted through this passage to transform in safety. The building would become known as the Shrieking Shack after locals heard the werewolf's howls. It was more than the Lupins had ever dared hope for. When Remus boarded the Hogwarts Express on September 1st, 1971, he was both excited and terrified. He carried his secret like a weight, knowing he could never fully share himself with any friends he might make. He had already prepared the lie he would tell about visiting his ill mother during full moons. Peter Pettigrew was born sometime around 1960. What little we know suggests that Peter was not a remarkable child. His early life remains largely a mystery, though his mother was still alive during the First Wizarding War. What seems certain is that Peter grew up without the confidence that marked James or the striking looks that characterized Sirius. He was ordinary in a world that valued extraordinary abilities, and he felt that ordinariness keenly. From an early age, Peter learned to attach himself to stronger personalities. He discovered that if he couldn't be impressive on his own, he could bask in the reflected glory of impressive friends. He became skilled at reading social situations, at understanding what people wanted and giving it to them. He learned to laugh at jokes, whether he found them funny or not, to agree with opinions, whether he shared them or not, to make himself useful and therefore necessary. When Peter received his Hogwarts letter, he was thrilled but also anxious. He boarded the Hogwarts Express with determination to find the right group to join. He found Remus Lupin sitting quietly in a compartment, looking nervous. Peter recognized a kindred spirit, someone else who seemed uncertain and out of place. They started talking, sharing their excitement and their fears. It was a genuine moment of connection. Later, Peter and Remus encountered James Potter and Sirius Black. The two boys were already thick as thieves, joking and laughing and radiating confidence. Peter was immediately drawn to them. They were exactly the kind of people he wanted to associate with. Popular, talented, from good families. If he could become their friend, he would finally be someone who mattered. James and Sirius accepted Peter's friendship easily. They liked his eagerness to please, his willingness to go along with their schemes, his absolute loyalty. Peter made them feel important and admired. He never challenged them or disagreed with them. In return, they included him in everything, treating him as an equal member of their group. The sorting ceremony on September 1st, 1971, was memorable for several reasons. When the sorting hat called out Gryffindor for James Potter, no one was surprised. When Sirius Black's name was called, the Great Hall went silent. Everyone knew the Black family had been Slytherins for generations. The hat took several minutes, but finally, to everyone's shock, it called out Gryffindor. Sirius's face split into the widest grin anyone had ever seen. He practically ran to the Gryffindor table, sliding onto the bench next to James. Remus Lupin's sorting into Gryffindor was quiet and unremarkable. Peter Pettigrew's sorting took over 5 minutes, making him what J.K. Rowling would later confirm as a true hat stall. The hat debated with itself while Peter sat beneath it, growing more anxious. Finally, with what sounded like reluctance, the hat declared Gryffindor. And down at the Slytherin table, Severus Snape watched Lily Evans join the Gryffindors with a sinking heart. He had known this would happen, but seeing it become reality stung more than he wanted to admit. The first few weeks at Hogwarts were overwhelming for all the first years. The 4 Gryffindor boys quickly bonded over their shared confusion and excitement. They stayed up late in their dormitory, talking about everything and nothing, forming the foundation of a friendship that would define their lives. James revealed himself to be naturally talented at transfiguration, capable of visualizing changes and executing them with ease that impressed even Professor McGonagall. Sirius was brilliant across the board when he actually applied himself. Having received the best magical education money could buy before Hogwarts, Remus was the most studious, throwing himself into his schoolwork with dedication that bordered on obsessive. Peter struggled more than the others academically, having to work twice as hard to achieve results that James or Sirius produced effortlessly. During their second year, James, Sirius, and Peter began to notice patterns in Remus's absences. They happened monthly, always around the same time. Remus would become withdrawn and sickly in the days leading up to his disappearances. They noticed that the Whomping Willow, planted on the grounds their first year, seemed connected to Remus's mysterious illnesses. The 3 boys started researching, convinced something was seriously wrong with their friend. It was Sirius who finally connected all the pieces. The monthly schedule, the connection to the lunar cycle, the violence of Remus's wounds. Their friend was a werewolf. Rather than react with fear or disgust, James, Sirius, and Peter felt a wave of sympathy and determination. Their friend had been dealing with this terrible burden alone. They would help him. The answer, when they found it, was both brilliant and incredibly difficult. They would become Animagi. According to expanded lore from official Wizarding World materials, the process began with holding a single mandrake leaf in their mouths for an entire month, from moon to moon, without swallowing or removing it. They went through this process multiple times, failing again and again before finally succeeding. Once they successfully held the leaf for a month, they had to place it in a crystal phial filled with their own saliva and add a strand of their own hair. Then they waited for an electrical storm, which could take weeks or months. Every morning and evening, without fail, they had to point their wands at their hearts and speak the incantation. Amato animo animato animagus. The waiting was agonizing. For over 2 years, James, Sirius, and Peter maintained this magical ritual, never wavering, never giving up, all for the sake of their friend. When electrical storms finally came, they drank the mixture at the first flash of lightning. They felt intense pain spreading through their bodies and saw visions of the animal forms they would take. James saw a stag. Sirius saw a large dog. Peter saw a rat. In their 5th year, they finally succeeded. James Potter became a magnificent red stag, earning the nickname Prongs. Sirius Black became a bear-like black dog, taking the nickname Padfoot. Peter Pettigrew became a small grey rat, earning the nickname Wormtail. Remus, who had been completely unaware of what his friends were doing, was stunned when they revealed their accomplishment. They explained why they had done it. Werewolves were only dangerous to humans. If they could accompany Remus during his transformations, he wouldn't be alone. Remus didn't know whether to laugh or cry. His friends had accomplished something incredibly difficult, had broken serious magical laws, had risked their own safety, all for him. The first time the 3 Animagi accompanied werewolf Remus was terrifying and exhilarating. As the full moon rose and Remus began to change, his friends transformed as well. The wolf that emerged snarled and circled, but then Padfoot the dog approached. Prongs, the stag, stood tall. Even Wormtail the rat scurried closer. The wolf's aggression faded. For the first time since he was bitten, Remus's transformation didn't end with him wounded and traumatized. From their 5th year onward, every full moon became an adventure. The Marauders, as they began to call themselves, explored every inch of the Hogwarts grounds and the Forbidden Forest. They discovered secret passages, hidden rooms, isolated clearings. They learned the castle's rhythms better than anyone else. Remus took the nickname Moony, both for the obvious reason and as a reclamation of the curse that had defined his life. As the Marauders grew older and more confident, they decided to create something that would immortalize their discoveries. They had spent years exploring Hogwarts in their animal forms. Why not create a map that showed everything? The creation of the Marauders map showcased each boy's particular talents. James brought his transfiguration expertise. Sirius contributed his knowledge of complex enchantments. Remus provided the theoretical framework. Even Peter played his part, handling some of the more tedious aspects. The map was created on a large piece of parchment, apparently blank to anyone who didn't know its secrets. Speak the words, "I solemnly swear that I'm up to no good," while touching a wand to it, and the map would spring to life. Ink would spread across the parchment, forming detailed layouts of Hogwarts' many floors. Secret passages would appear, and most impressively, tiny dots with names would show the real-time location of every person in the castle. The magic required was extraordinarily advanced, involving homunculus charms to track individuals and powerful enchantments to keep the map constantly updated. The Marauders worked on it throughout their 6th year, signing it with their nicknames, Messrs. Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, purveyors of aids to magical mischief makers. With the Marauders' map in their possession, the 4 friends became even more audacious in their rule-breaking. They could see when professors were coming. They could track their targets when planning pranks. They could find secret passages to leave the castle grounds. The map became legendary among the Marauders, though its existence remained secret from most of Hogwarts. As the Marauders used their map for mischief and adventure, their reputation at Hogwarts grew. To some students, particularly in Gryffindor, they were heroes. They pulled pranks that became legendary. They stood up to bullies. But to others, the Marauders were bullies themselves. James and Sirius, in particular, had a cruel streak, especially when it came to students they disliked. And their primary target was Severus Snape. The rivalry between James Potter and Severus Snape had begun on the Hogwarts Express and only intensified over the years. Part of it was genuine ideological differences. Snape was fascinated by the dark arts, hung around with future Death Eaters, and didn't hide his belief in pureblood supremacy. James and Sirius found these views repugnant. But there was more to it than ideology. James and Snape were both talented, both intelligent, and both utterly unwilling to back down from conflict. Adding fuel to this rivalry was Lily Evans. Snape had been in love with Lily since childhood, since before they even knew they were magical. She was his first friend, his introduction to the wizarding world. At Hogwarts, he watched as Lily made new friends, became popular, and drifted away from him. And he watched as James Potter fell in love with her. James's attraction to Lily began in their first year and only grew stronger with time. She was beautiful, brilliant, brave, and completely unimpressed by James Potter. While other girls admired his Quidditch skills, Lily rolled her eyes and told him he was an arrogant bully. This rejection only made James want her more. Lily Evans was Muggle-born, the younger daughter of 2 completely non-magical parents. At Hogwarts, she threw herself into her studies and her friendships. She became a prefect in her 5th year, and she maintained her friendship with Severus Snape for years, despite the growing concerns of her other friends. Lily's friends couldn't understand why she stayed loyal to Snape. But Lily saw the boy she had grown up with, the one who had shown her the magical world. James, watching Lily defend Snape again and again, grew increasingly frustrated. He began targeting Snape more aggressively, partly out of genuine dislike, and partly hoping that if he humiliated Snape enough, Lily would finally see what kind of person her childhood friend really was. The worst incident came in their 5th year, in June after they had finished their owl exams. James and Sirius were relaxing by the lake when they spotted Snape reviewing his papers. James was bored and looking for entertainment. What followed was captured in a memory that Harry Potter would later view in Snape's pensive. James and Sirius approached Snape and easily disarmed him, sending his wand flying. James used spells to torment Snape while he was helpless. A crowd gathered. Lily Evans arrived and immediately demanded that James stop. She called him an arrogant, bullying toe rag. James, trying to regain his dignity, made a terrible offer. He would let Snape go if Lily agreed to go out with him. Lily refused, disgusted. For a brief moment, her expression seemed to soften towards Snape. But then Snape, humiliated beyond bearing, lashed out at Lily with the worst possible insult. He called her a mudblood. The slur hung in the air, shocking everyone into silence. It meant dirty blood, implying that Muggleborns were inferior, contaminated. Lily tried to give Snape a chance to take it back, but Snape doubled down. Their friendship died in that moment. Lily walked away, and though Snape would spend the rest of his life regretting that moment, their friendship was over. This incident revealed uncomfortable truths about everyone involved. James was shown to be a bully who used his power to humiliate someone weaker. Sirius was equally cruel. Peter was a follower who would laugh at anything. Remus knew his friends were wrong, but lacked the courage to stop them. And Snape showed his willingness to use hateful slurs even against someone he loved. In the aftermath, Lily Evans cut ties with Snape completely, but she also maintained her low opinion of James Potter. The summer after their 5th year marked a turning point for James. Away from Hogwarts, he had time to think. His parents had a serious conversation with him about power and how it should be used. James took these words to heart. When he returned for his 6th year, James made a conscious effort to change. He stopped actively seeking out Snape to torment. He was made Quidditch captain and threw himself into that responsibility. He still hexed people occasionally, but only those who genuinely deserved it. He tried to be the person Lily Evans might actually respect. By their 7th year, James had matured considerably. He was head boy, indicating that Dumbledore believed he had changed. Lily Evans was head girl, which meant they had to work together regularly. This forced proximity allowed Lily to see the changes in James, to recognize that he had grown up. James had also deflated his head a bit, as Sirius would later phrase it. He stopped showing off quite so obviously. He treated people with more respect. Lily began to see James differently. She noticed how he stood up for students being bullied. She saw how seriously he took his duties as head boy. Slowly, her opinion shifted. When James asked Lily out in 7th year, she surprised herself by saying yes. They discovered genuine compatibility. By the time they graduated from Hogwarts in 1978, James and Lily were deeply in love. They married soon after, in a small ceremony attended by close friends and family. Sirius Black stood as James's best man. Remus Lupin and Peter Pettigrew attended, showing no sign of the darkness growing inside one of them. The Marauders' time at Hogwarts had come to an end, but the world they graduated into was not peaceful. The First Wizarding War was in full swing, and Lord Voldemort was more powerful than ever. The war had been building throughout the Marauders' school years. Voldemort had begun his rise to power in the late 1960s, gathering followers who believed in pure-blood supremacy. His Death Eaters committed acts of terror throughout Britain. Muggleborns and Muggles were primary targets. Families were murdered in their homes. People disappeared. The Imperious Curse was used to control innocent people. Fear spread through both the magical and non-magical worlds. The Ministry of Magic struggled to contain the threat. Voldemort's forces were organized, ruthless, and willing to use magic that law-abiding wizards hesitated to employ. Albus Dumbledore, recognizing that official channels were insufficient, founded the Order of the Phoenix. This secret organization was dedicated to fighting Voldemort through direct action. The Order's membership included some of the bravest witches and wizards of the time. Alistair Mad-Eye Moody, Minerva McGonagall, and Dumbledore himself led the effort. When the Marauders graduated, they immediately joined. James and Lily Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew all dedicated themselves to fighting Voldemort. They were among the youngest members, barely adults, but they were talented and brave and idealistic. Sirius's family situation had deteriorated completely. He had run away from home at age 16, unable to tolerate his mother's fanaticism. He went to the Potters, who took him in without hesitation. When Sirius's uncle, Alphard, left him a generous inheritance, it provided financial independence. Meanwhile, Sirius's younger brother, Regulus, joined the Death Eaters at 16, thrilling their mother and breaking whatever remained of the relationship between the brothers. Remus struggled to find his place in the Order. His lycanthropy made him a target of suspicion even among those who should have known better. He threw himself into Order missions with determination that bordered on reckless. Peter found himself on the margins of the Order's activities, never given the most crucial assignments. His friends protected him, aware that he wasn't as powerful or brave as they were. The First Wizarding War was brutal. The Order suffered devastating losses. Marlene McKinnon was murdered along with her entire family. Gideon and Fabian Pruitt fought against 5 Death Eaters and died like heroes. Benji Fenwick was killed so violently that searchers only ever found bits of him. Edgar Bones and his family were slaughtered. The casualty rate for the Order was staggering. James and Lily Potter became key members of the Order. They were young, but they were powerful and completely committed. Together, they defied Voldemort himself 3 times, escaping encounters that should have killed them. The exact nature of those 3 encounters was never recorded in detail, leaving us to wonder what specific confrontations earned the Potters this distinction. In 1980, Albus Dumbledore interviewed Sybil Trelawney for the position of divination professor. She seemed to have little genuine talent, but then something extraordinary happened. Trelawney's eyes went unfocused. Her voice changed. She spoke words that would alter the course of history. The one with the power to vanquish the Dark Lord approaches, born to those who have thrice defied him, born as the 7th month dies. And the Dark Lord will mark him as his equal, but he will have power the Dark Lord knows not, and either must die at the hand of the other, for neither can live while the other survives. It was a true prophecy. Dumbledore recognized it immediately. A child, not yet born, who would have the power to defeat Voldemort. Born to parents who had defied the Dark Lord 3 times. Born as July ended. 2 couples fit those criteria. Frank and Alice Longbottom were expecting their first child in late July. And James and Lily Potter were also expecting a baby, due at the end of July. But unknown to Dumbledore, the prophecy had been partially overheard. Severus Snape, who had joined the Death Eaters and was working as a spy for Voldemort, had been lurking outside the room. He heard the first part before being discovered and thrown out. He didn't hear the complete thing, but he heard enough. And like the loyal Death Eater he was at that time, he immediately reported to his master. Voldemort became obsessed with the prophecy. When he learned that both the Longbottoms and the Potters had sons born in late July of 1980, he had to choose. Neville Longbottom, born July 30th. Harry Potter, born July 31st. Voldemort chose Harry Potter, perhaps because the Potters had defied him more directly. Perhaps because Harry was a half-blood like Voldemort himself. When Severus Snape learned that Voldemort had chosen to target the Potters, he was horrified. Lily Potter had been his best friend. He had been in love with her since they were children. He had lost her through his own choices, but he had never stopped loving her. And now, because of information he had provided, Voldemort was going to kill her. Snape did something he had never done before. He went to Albus Dumbledore. He begged the headmaster to protect Lily. Dumbledore saw an opportunity. He agreed to do everything in his power to protect Lily. But the best way to ensure her safety was for Snape to work as a spy for the Order. Snape agreed without hesitation. From that moment on, he became a double agent, risking everything for Lily. Dumbledore informed James and Lily about the prophecy and the danger they faced. The Potters went into hiding, using every protection available. But as the months wore on, it became clear that simply moving around wasn't enough. They needed the Fidelius Charm. The Fidelius Charm was incredibly powerful magic that involved hiding a secret inside a living person's soul. That person, the secret keeper, would be the only one capable of revealing the secret. No amount of torture could extract the information against the secret keeper's will. They had to voluntarily share it. Dumbledore offered to be the Potters' secret keeper, but James and Lily declined. They felt Dumbledore was too obvious a choice. Instead, they decided to ask Sirius Black, James's best friend and Harry's godfather. But Sirius had concerns. He explained that he was too obvious a choice as well. Everyone knew he was James's best friend. Sirius proposed an alternative. What if they used Peter Pettigrew as secret keeper instead? Peter was devoted to them, certainly, but he was also the least obvious choice. No one would suspect that the Potters would trust their safety to Peter rather than Sirius. It was brilliant misdirection. There may have been another factor in Sirius's reasoning, though this remains somewhat unclear from the historical record. According to later accounts, Sirius had begun to suspect there was a spy in the Order, and in the paranoid atmosphere of the war, even Remus Lupin fell under suspicion. If the spy believed Sirius was the secret keeper, the trap might reveal the traitor. But if Peter was the actual secret keeper, and only Sirius, James, and Lily knew, the secret would remain safe. James and Lily agreed to the plan. They trusted Sirius's judgment. Peter was devoted to them. They had known him for 10 years, fought alongside him, considered him family. The Fidelius Charm was cast, with Peter Pettigrew as secret keeper. The Potter's location in Godric's Hollow was hidden inside Peter's soul. What none of them knew was that Peter Pettigrew had already betrayed them. Peter was the spy in the Order of the Phoenix. He had been passing information to Voldemort for some time. Based on what we can piece together from later testimonies and the evidence of his actions, Peter's journey to betrayal seems to have been gradual, likely a series of small compromises that built into something monstrous. It appears to have begun with fear. As the war intensified, as Order members died one after another, Peter realized that Voldemort might actually win. The Dark Lord seemed unstoppable. Peter was not brave. He never had been. At some point, Peter appears to have made contact with the Death Eaters. Each betrayal likely made the next easier. Peter may have told himself he was just trying to survive, that anyone would do the same. But Order members died because of what Peter revealed. Voldemort recognized Peter's cowardice and used it brilliantly. He didn't offer Peter power or glory. He offered him survival. Join the Death Eaters, serve the Dark Lord, and Peter would be on the winning side. For Peter, it wasn't even a difficult choice. He took the Dark Mark. When James and Lily made Peter their secret keeper, it must have seemed like fate to Peter. Here was the information Voldemort wanted most. Peter waited less than a week before he betrayed the Potters. On Halloween night, October 31st, 1981, he gave Voldemort the location of the cottage in Godric's Hollow. That night, Voldemort came to Godric's Hollow. He could see the cottage now, the Fidelius Charm broken by Peter's betrayal. He blasted through the door. James Potter, hearing the explosion, shouted for Lily to take Harry and run. He grabbed his wand and went to confront Voldemort, buying time for his wife and son to escape. James didn't stand a chance. Voldemort simply raised his wand and spoke 2 words, Avada Kedavra. The killing curse struck James Potter in the chest. He died instantly, falling to the floor of his own home, his last thought probably hoping that Lily and Harry had gotten away. But there was nowhere to go. Lily reached Harry's nursery and grabbed her son from his crib. She could hear Voldemort's footsteps on the stairs. When the Dark Lord entered the nursery, Lily stood in front of Harry's crib, shielding her son with her body. According to what we later learned from Snape's memories, Voldemort made an unusual offer, born of a promise he had made to Severus Snape. He told Lily to stand aside. He had come for the boy, not her. If she moved, he would let her live. Lily refused. She begged Voldemort to take her instead, to kill her and spare Harry. Voldemort had no patience for this. He told her again to stand aside. Again, she refused. So Voldemort killed her. Avada Kedavra. The green light filled the nursery. Lily Potter fell, dead before she hit the ground. She was 21 years old. With Lily dead, Voldemort turned to Harry. The baby was crying now, standing in his crib. Voldemort raised his wand one more time. Another killing curse, this one meant for a 15-month-old child. And something impossible happened. The curse rebounded. Instead of killing Harry, it bounced back on Voldemort himself. The Dark Lord's body was destroyed, reduced to less than a ghost. Harry survived with nothing but a lightning bolt-shaped scar on his forehead. The magical explosion destroyed much of the cottage, but Harry's crib remained intact. Rubeus Hagrid was the first to arrive. Dumbledore had sent him, sensing that something terrible had happened. Hagrid found the cottage in ruins, found James and Lily dead, found baby Harry alive. The gentle half-giant wept as he lifted the child from the destroyed nursery. As Hagrid was preparing to leave, Sirius Black arrived on his flying motorcycle. He had come as soon as he realized Peter had betrayed them, but he was too late. Sirius begged Hagrid to give him Harry. He was the boy's godfather. But Hagrid refused. He had orders from Dumbledore. Sirius let Hagrid take Harry on the motorcycle. Then Sirius set off to find Peter Pettigrew. Peter knew Sirius would come for him. He had a plan that would ensure his safety and frame Sirius for all of Peter's crimes. Sirius tracked Peter to a crowded London street the next day. Peter, before Sirius could speak, shouted loudly for all to hear. "Lily and James, Sirius, how could you?" He accused Sirius of being the betrayer. The Muggles didn't understand, but they heard enough. Then Peter cut off his own finger. Before Sirius could react, Peter caused an explosion. He blew up the street with a powerful curse. The explosion created a crater large enough that the sewer pipes were visible. 12 Muggles died instantly. In the chaos, Peter transformed into his rat form, left his severed finger behind, and scurried into the sewers. When Ministry officials arrived, they found Sirius Black standing in the middle of the destruction, laughing. The laughter wasn't joy. At least, that's how those who knew Sirius later understood it. It seemed to be the sound of a man whose entire world had collapsed. The evidence seemed overwhelming. Sirius had been the secret keeper, or so everyone believed. Peter appeared to be dead. 12 Muggles were dead. The Aurors arrested Sirius on the spot. Sirius Black was sent to Azkaban prison without a trial. Barty Crouch Sr. simply threw Sirius into prison and moved on. No one questioned whether Sirius was actually guilty. Remus Lupin learned about everything from Dumbledore. James and Lily murdered. Harry orphaned. Peter killed trying to confront the traitor. Sirius revealed as a Death Eater. In one night, Remus lost 3 of his 4 closest friends. The grief and betrayal broke something in Remus. He withdrew from the wizarding world almost completely. He lived in poverty, unable to hold a job because of his lycanthropy. Peter Pettigrew, meanwhile, hid in his rat form. he found a safe place with the Weasley family. Percy Weasley received a rat as a pet. They called the rat Scabbers. They had no idea they were harboring a Death Eater in their home. Peter spent 12 years as Scabbers, waiting to see if Voldemort would ever return. Albus Dumbledore made a decision that night that would be debated for years. He took Harry Potter to number 4, Privet Drive, the home of Lily's sister Petunia and her husband Vernon Dursley. He left the baby on their doorstep with a letter. Dumbledore's reasoning was complex. Harry couldn't grow up in the wizarding world, famous and celebrated. That kind of attention would warp him. Harry needed humility. But there was more to it. Lily's sacrifice had created powerful protective magic. As long as Harry lived with Petunia, as long as he returned to Privet Drive, Voldemort and his followers could not harm him there. The cost of this protection was high. The Dursleys hated magic and resented Harry's presence. They treated him terribly. Harry would grow up neglected and emotionally abused. But he would survive. The wizarding world celebrated Voldemort's defeat. People danced in the streets. The Dark Lord had fallen. The war was over. November 1st, 1981, was a day of joy and relief. But the celebrations were built on tragedy. James and Lily Potter were dead. Sirius Black was in Azkaban for crimes he didn't commit. Peter Pettigrew was hiding as a rat. Remus Lupin was broken and isolated. And Harry Potter was left on a doorstep to grow up with relatives who would make his life miserable. The Marauders era ended on Halloween night, 1981. 4 friends who had once believed they would stand together forever were scattered to the winds. The bonds they had formed at Hogwarts, the adventures they had shared, all of it shattered in a single night of betrayal and murder. But the legacy of the Marauders lived on. The Marauders' map, confiscated by Filch during their school years but later found by Fred and George Weasley, would help Harry Potter navigate Hogwarts just as it had helped his father. The sacrifice James and Lily made would protect Harry in ways they never could have imagined. The love they showed their son would prove to be the most powerful magic in existence. Sirius Black would eventually escape from Azkaban 12 years later, driven by the need to protect Harry from Peter Pettigrew. He would become the godfather Harry desperately needed, even if only for a few short years before his death. Remus Lupin would return to Hogwarts as a teacher, giving Harry connection to his father's generation and teaching him the Patronus charm that would save his life multiple times. In the films, the Marauders era was shown primarily through fragments and flashbacks. We saw them in photographs, frozen in time, forever young and smiling. We glimpsed them in Snape's memories, both the good and the terrible. We heard about them from Lupin and Sirius during their brief time in Harry's life. Adrian Rawlins played James Potter in the few scenes where he appeared, giving us a brief look at Harry's father as a young man. In those moments, we saw James's love for his family, his bravery in facing Voldemort unarmed. Gary Oldman's portrayal of Sirius Black showed us the toll that Azkaban and loss had taken. The Sirius we met in Prisoner of Azkaban was gaunt and wild, desperate and dangerous looking. But as the films progressed, we saw glimpses of who Sirius had been before. His humor, his loyalty, his reckless bravery. When Sirius died in Order of the Phoenix, falling through the veil, we lost the last direct link to James Potter's generation. David Thewlis brought quiet dignity to Remus Lupin across multiple films. His Lupin was gentle and kind, marked by sadness but never broken by it. When Lupin died at the Battle of Hogwarts, fighting alongside the Order one last time, it felt like the final end of the Marauders era. Timothy Spall made Peter Pettigrew simultaneously pathetic and horrifying. capturing Peter's cowardice and desperate need to attach himself to whoever held power. In the books, Peter's moment of mercy toward Harry cost him his life when the silver hand Voldemort had given him turned on him. The films leave his ultimate fate ambiguous. We last see him stunned by Dobby at Malfoy Manor, his final moments unrecorded. The scene in Order of the Phoenix where Harry used Snape's pensieve to view his father's memories was crucial. It showed Harry that James Potter hadn't been a perfect hero. He had been a bully, arrogant, and cruel. This revelation complicated Harry's understanding of his father and his own identity. The films wisely didn't try to explain away or excuse James's behavior. Sirius and Remus's later conversation with Harry about James's maturation helped provide context without erasing what Harry had seen. The Marauders map itself became a significant element across multiple films. When Fred and George gave it to Harry in Prisoner of Azkaban, they were passing on a piece of his father's legacy. The map helped Harry sneak into Hogsmeade, explore the castle, and eventually discover Peter Pettigrew's true identity. The map's creators identified themselves on its surface: Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. When Harry learned what these nicknames meant, it gave him a deeper understanding of who James Potter had been. The Patronus Charm provided another connection between Harry and his father. When Harry learned to produce a corporeal Patronus in Prisoner of Azkaban, it took the form of a stag, the same animal his father had transformed into. Harry saw his Patronus across the lake and initially thought it was his father somehow come back to save him. When he realized he was the one who had cast the spell, it was a moment of understanding his own power and his connection to his father's legacy. When the full truth about Snape was revealed in Deathly Hallows Part 2, when Harry saw all of Snape's memories, the Marauders' era came full circle. We saw young Severus and young Lily as children before Hogwarts. We saw the day that friendship died, when Snape called Lily a mudblood. We saw Snape's devastation when he learned Voldemort had chosen to target the Potters. We saw his desperate plea to Dumbledore to save Lily. And we saw his grief when he held Lily's body in the ruins of Godric's Hollow. These memories recontextualized everything we thought we knew about Snape and the Marauders era. Snape wasn't simply evil. He had been shaped by trauma, by rejection, by loss. His terrible choices stemmed from pain and a desperate desire to belong. And when he finally did the right thing, protecting Lily's son despite everything, it was an act of redemption that spanned nearly 2 decades. The Marauders weren't simple heroes either. James had been a bully who matured into a good man, but never fully escaped his past. Sirius was brave and loyal, but also reckless and sometimes cruel. Remus was kind and intelligent, but lacked the courage to stand up to his friends when they were wrong. And Peter was always weak, always fearful, always looking for the path of least resistance. The Battle of Hogwarts in Deathly Hallows. Part 2 brought the Marauders' legacy into sharp focus. When Harry walked through the forest to sacrifice himself, when he used the Resurrection Stone to summon his parents, Sirius and Remus, he was drawing strength from the Marauders' era one final time. James told Harry they would be with him until the very end. Lily assured him that dying didn't hurt. Sirius called him brave. Remus apologized for leaving him. In that moment, the gap between the Marauders' era and Harry's present collapsed. When Harry returned from death and faced Voldemort in the Great Hall, he did so carrying everything the Marauders had taught him. His father's courage, his mother's love, Sirius's fierce loyalty, Remus's quiet strength. Even Peter's betrayal had taught Harry something valuable about trust and choosing friends wisely. After the war ended, Harry made sure the Marauders were remembered properly. He named his first son James Sirius Potter, honoring both his father and his godfather. He named his daughter Lily Luna Potter, and he named his second son Albus Severus Potter, acknowledging both Dumbledore and Snape's contributions. Harry told his son Albus Severus that he was named after two headmasters of Hogwarts, and one of them was a Slytherin and probably the bravest man Harry ever knew. This was Harry declaring that Severus Snape was among the bravest, a testament to how deeply Harry understood the cost of Snape's double life. The Marauders' story influenced Harry's choices as an adult. He became an Auror, fighting against dark wizards just as James and Lily had done. He married Ginny Weasley, creating the family that had been stolen from him. He stayed close to Ron and Hermione, maintaining the friendships that had defined his life. Most importantly, Harry understood the danger of secrets and lies. The Marauders had kept so many secrets from each other, and those blind spots had enabled tragedy. Harry learned from those mistakes. The Marauders' map remained in Harry's possession after the war. This magical artifact, created by 4 friends during their school years, had survived everything. Harry kept it as a connection to his father, a reminder of James Potter's cleverness and mischief. Perhaps one day, Harry passed the map on to his own children. In Hogwarts itself, the memory of the Marauders lived on. The Whomping Willow still stood on the grounds, planted decades ago to conceal the entrance to the Shrieking Shack. Students still whispered about the shack being haunted. The secret passages the Marauders had mapped still existed, waiting for new generations to discover them. The story of the Marauders spread beyond just those who knew them personally. It became part of Hogwarts legend, shared among students in whispered conversations. The tale of 4 friends who became Animagi to help their werewolf companion. The brilliant students who created a map that could track anyone in the castle. The tragic heroes who fought against Voldemort and paid the ultimate price. These stories took on a life of their own, becoming myth even as the truth became history. Sirius Black was posthumously exonerated, his name cleared and his reputation restored. The Ministry issued a formal apology for imprisoning him without trial. A memorial was erected in his honor. James and Lily Potter were already honored, their sacrifice remembered every year. Statues were erected in Godric's Hollow. Flowers appeared at their grave year after year. Peter Pettigrew received no honors. His name became synonymous with betrayal in the wizarding world. The complete story of the Marauders era reveals a narrative of extraordinary complexity. It's not a simple tale of good versus evil. It's a story about human nature, about the choices we make when faced with impossible circumstances, about the ways fear and love and loyalty and betrayal can shape our lives. The Marauders were products of their time, shaped by the society they grew up in and the war that defined their young adulthood. These 4 boys met on a train and formed a bond that seemed unbreakable. They accomplished remarkable magic together. They fought together in a war against the darkest wizard of their time, but the bond did break. Fear proved stronger than friendship for one of them. The tragedy of the Marauders era is that it didn't have to end the way it did. If Peter had been loyal, if the Fidelius Charm had held, James and Lily might have survived. Harry would have grown up with his parents. Sirius wouldn't have spent 12 years in Azkaban. Remus wouldn't have spent years alone and broken. But there's another side to that tragedy. If things had happened differently, Voldemort might not have been defeated when he was. The very things that made Harry into the person who could defeat Voldemort came from the tragedy of his parents' deaths. This doesn't make the tragedy right or necessary. It simply illustrates how complicated the Marauders' story really is. There are no simple answers, no clear moral lessons that wrap everything up neatly. The Marauders' era was messy and painful and real. full of mistakes and sacrifices and consequences that no one could have fully predicted. The Marauders' story resonates because it's fundamentally about choosing who we want to be. James chose to overcome his arrogance and become someone Lily Evans could love and respect. Sirius chose to reject his family's prejudice and forge his own path. Remus chose to fight against the darkness despite knowing how the world saw him. Peter chose fear over courage, self-preservation over loyalty, and became a cautionary tale about the cost of those choices. We see ourselves in the Marauders. We recognize our own capacity for both heroism and failure. We understand the temptation to take the easy path. We know what it's like to make mistakes and have to live with them. We've felt the power of true friendship and the pain of betrayal. The Marauders' story works because it's human in all the best and worst ways. Their era also reminds us that every generation faces its own darkness. The Marauders fought Voldemort's first rise to power. Harry and his friends fought the second. Each generation must choose whether to stand against evil or to look away. The lessons of the Marauders era about the importance of loyalty, the danger of prejudice, the power of love, and the cost of cowardice remain relevant no matter when or where we live. So as you drift off to sleep tonight, think about these 4 boys who became men too quickly, who fought in a war they were too young to fight, who paid prices too high for anyone to pay. Think about James Potter, who died protecting his family. Think about Lily Evans, who sacrificed herself to save her son. Think about Sirius Black, who spent years in prison for crimes he didn't commit and died trying to protect his godson. Think about Remus Lupin, who fought against prejudice his entire life and died in the battle for a better world. And yes, think about Peter Pettigrew, who shows us that friendship and loyalty require courage and choice, that fear can corrupt even those who once seemed decent. Remember that Peter was loved by his friends, and he still chose betrayal. His story is a warning about standing up for what's right, even when it's hard. The Marauders era ended in tragedy, but it also created the foundation for hope. Harry Potter survived because of his mother's love. He grew strong because of his father's legacy. He learned about courage from Sirius and Remus. He understood the importance of choice because of Peter's betrayal. Everything the Marauders were, everything they did, good and bad, shaped the boy who would ultimately save the wizarding world. Their map remains, a testament to their cleverness and their friendship. Their story remains, told and retold, lessons learned and relearned with each generation. Their sacrifice remains, the foundation on which a better world was built. The Marauders are gone, all 4 of them, but what they created, the love they shared, the choices they made, the legacy they left behind that lives on forever. So sleep well tonight, knowing that even in the darkest times, friendship matters. That even when we make mistakes, we can choose to be better. That love is the most powerful magic we have. That courage isn't the absence of fear, but the decision to do what's right despite it. And that the choices we make today echo forward through time, shaping the world for those who come after us. The Marauders taught us all of this through their triumphs and their failures, through their lives and their deaths. James, Sirius, Remus, and Peter. Prongs, Padfoot, Moony, and Wormtail. 4 friends who changed the wizarding world forever, for better and for worse. May we learn from their example, both what to emulate and what to avoid. May we choose loyalty over fear, courage over comfort, love over hate. And may we remember, always, that mischief managed. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Marauders era. If you enjoyed this deep exploration of the lore behind James, Sirius, Remus, and Peter, please consider liking this video and subscribing to Sleep 2 Cinema for more detailed examinations of your favorite film universes. Until next time, rest well and dream of magic.